everyone, and welcome to Build Your AutoCAD IQ. Today we're going to be presenting tips and tricks developing a company template. My name is Ashley, and with me today are my colleagues Dave and Nauman, who's actually going to be presenting to you. So thank you to everyone for taking time out of your day to be here. We're happy to have you. So a little bit about us. Nauman is our AutoCAD expert elite and also our presenter for today. Dave is a technical support specialist based out of our Manchester office, and I am also a technical support specialist in Boston. So before we get started, please feel free to leave questions in the chat window and we'll answer them as best we can. We'll also address questions that we're not able to cover after the webinar. This session will be recorded and links are available in the registration reminder, the post-webinar survey, and of course the chat window. Here on the left, we have some upcoming webinar topics through September and October. You can watch past webinars at any time on YouTube. And if you'd like, you can also download the datasets from Box to follow along. So here we have our Autodesk Knowledge Network. We have a plethora of information for AutoCAD, AutoCAD LT, and all the verticals. We have getting started information, troubleshooting, and learning, as well as service packs. So before we get into the agenda, we have a couple of quick polls for you that Dave is going to run. If you could help us out with those.
Yep, thanks Ashley. Yeah, I'll go ahead and start the first poll here about whether or not this is your first time at one of our webinars. And it looks like most of our webinars, most of the folks here have been to one of these webinars in the past. So welcome back. And for those that are new to the webinar, thank you for coming. And I'll go ahead and close the poll and then share my results here. So you can see about 94% have been to one of these before and 6% have not. And then the next poll I want to run is just which application people are using. So they're using AutoCAD LT, or one of the verticals, or something completely foreign to Autodesk. You'll see kind of what people are running. And it's looking like the majority running AutoCAD, about a third running LT, and a third running one of the AutoCAD verticals. So we'll go ahead and shut off that poll here. So you get about 41% AutoCAD, 27% LT, and 16 using one of the other verticals. So architectural, MEP, etc. So go ahead and hide that. And with this, we'll go ahead and pass it over to Nauman and let him start the presentation.
Hello everyone, thanks for giving me the opportunity to present today, and I'll be covering some template directions. Let me switch my screen here for a second, you know, those awkward moments sometimes we have. And one second. Okay, so I hope we can see my screen now, hopefully. And so today we're covering basically the idea of creating a template for your office or for a project or a client. I deal with this all the time with coming up with standards for our company or other companies. But basically where we need to start first is planning. What standard are you going for? Where you are located, every geographic area has their own standards. UK has its own. In this case, I have this web page open. Those links are in the document, by the way. And city will have their own CAD standards. States will have their own standards. In US, we at least have the United States National CAD standards, but that is basically a guideline. And I will be following on that idea. So the first planning is basically layers. You need to make sure what layering you have, and then you get into different types of text styles. We get into dimension styles, and other blocks, symbols, and whatnot. We're not going to cover symbols anything, but the idea would be is to pre-populating your documents, having a document that everybody can start from that has the settings correct from the get-go. So by no means this is all-encompassing. I'm trying to cover as much as I can today. So first and foremost, let's get into AutoCAD, and we're decided that we're going to have a standard. Typically, I'll have my company sheet and page override set up. Then I'll have, if I start my new project, I will have my company model text, model, and a separate sheet. And the reason I do it is just it makes it a little bit easier to have page setup overrides. You can incorporate the two together, but I'll show you a workflow that when we get into plotting might makes a little bit more sense when we get to it. So first and foremost, to basically start a template, you need to decide which format you're going to go with. In this case, I'm going to just start with the plain AutoCAD.dwt, which is the basic most template. The biggest change recently has been is that they have switched files when we get to it to Arial, to true type formats instead of the SHX. So once my drawing is started, the first thing I'm going to talk about is going to be the options. Well, why about options? Well, the options are important because they control what and how you are presented with your template. So what I'll do is I'm going to go to my options, and in the command bar I can right click and say options, and under the files tab, if you look at all the way to the bottom, it says template settings. This is where I am going to define where my templates are stored, also where my sheet set template, if you use sheet set manager, default template file name for QNew. So let's change that because as soon as I hit the new button, I want to start up running. So I'll change that and browse to my template directory, and I will name it my company model.dwt. So I'll set that, and then template for sheet creation and page setup overrides. That's why I have two separate ones. You can have the same one. So I'll select my company sheet.dwt. So these are my template settings that I did. There are other settings that you want to set up also within the template, or in your basically your profile would be your plot style table search path. In this, you will put in your CTB file for your company. I'll do that when we get to the printing. And also, if you have any custom printers that you have set up under the plotters, so the PC3 files, those are what goes in here. Another one you can also want to change is the under open save. You want to make sure that some people like to have the viz retain, which is, on our XREF webinars we have covered that, retain changes to XREF. Check that and allow other users to ref edit the current drawing. So if you're working with XREFs a lot, I would recommend that you have that settings checked. And then I also set my demand load XREF. So that's a profile-based setting versus this icon. If you see the drawing icon right next to the setting, that means it's a current drawing setting. So we want to make sure that we have it set up correctly up front so we don't have to constantly change it all the time. So those are some of the important settings that you want to make sure that you change. The other one is, if you go through those dialog boxes, the system settings under there, again, allow long symbol file names, user preferences, and they make new dimensions associative depending how you want to do that in your company, whether you like that feature or not. But as you can see, what I'm trying to show you is pay attention to the icon, the drawing icon. Another one you want to, sometimes I change, is this display resolution, which is that arc smoothing. So maybe I take it up to 10,000. So to have it apply solid fill, those are the settings you can upfront do that. So let's click OK because I'm done with my profile settings in the options. The next, sometimes I work with the grid. A lot of people don't. If you're in the mechanical trades, you would like to have it on. In architectural, we typically don't do it because I sometimes have a little bit, it's too busy. So I'll hit F7 to turn my grid off. You can also have the grid turned off using your buttons right here at the bottom. So I have my snap mode off, which is the F9, because I don't like snaps, because we're building in bigger scale. So depending on your personal preference, you can do that. But these are the settings that get saved with the drawing file that you are going to start with. Typically, I start with every project for architectural 1/8" scale, so I'm going to set that to 1/8 inch. So when I start a new project, I have that up front. So those are the settings we'll do. One more setting that I don't know if it is in the dialogues or anything is called XREF override. And this setting, this is a brand new setting, I think in 2016, where if you say 1, what it will do is in any overrides that a person has in the base XREF file, so if you're getting a consultant file, you want to override them to a color that you want and a line weight you want, you can set that variable to 1, and then all their settings will be nullified. Overrides, like if you override the color of the object, it doesn't matter, it'll automatically take on the bilayer. So it's a very powerful command that they added recently. So those are some of the settings. These settings, again, you want to set those up front. Then first thing first, let's save this drawing. So I'm going to say File, Save As, Drawing, and here I'm going to come down and say AutoCAD Template Drawing, since I am setting up a template file, and I'm going to say Update Sheet and View Thumbnails. If you have some information typed up or border or something, you can check that box. So I'm just going to use a short saying MYC-model here, since I already have some demo my company-model, and hit the Save button. So you can type in your information here. The other things I forgot to mention, I guess, or I should mention, is the units, basically. The units you want to set up whether you want architectural. I'm going to have a bias with architectural because I'm an architect by trade, so let's just keep it at architectural. So hit OK. Those settings are going to be saved in the template file. So what happens is that the Q new, if I hit this new drawing button, which is the Q new, my drawing starts directly from my template that I have specified. If you notice, in this case, I have my dimensions set up already in this template. My dimension styles are already ready to go. The other settings that we just did are ready to go. So every time you start a new project, you will be that way. Much easier to start. And you already have those. Maybe you want to improve your template, some of the ideas that you pick up here maybe. So I'm going to say no to this drawing because I just started that. Again, the setting that we did under options right here, under the template settings, default template file name for QNew is what I pointed to, and then I can quickly hit OK, quickly hit the QNew button and start with a file that is ready to go based on my company standards. So the next step, what we do is, in this case, if I look at the style command, which is the AutoCAD text styles under annotate, text, right here is, there are two separate styles, annotative and standard. Now, annotative is the standard, and the standard is the standard always. The one thing that has changed, maybe I don't forget, maybe 2009, 10, I forget what that, but it switched to Arial instead of the Roman, the standard.txt file. But the key is here, don't use standard for your standards, and don't use annotative for your standards, because a lot of drawings that people will send you will already have standards, and if you open them up, they won't meet your standard because everybody's standard is a different standard. So that's why it's important. What I do is, as a naming convention that I've showed you earlier, was to put in like a abbreviation of your company or something like that that identifies that those are your template settings, the standards, whatnot. So I'll follow that through all those different items that we will cover.
Yeah,
So
that's the best
first,
thing
again,
about standards, Norman, is that there's so many of them.
Yeah, that's true. And everybody has their own preference. Again, the idea would be is to just kind of give them the, overall, hey, how about to think about different things on their when they start a project and improve their client. If they have a repeat client, you want to set it up that way, So let's do that. So let's talk about text. So again, this button right here, I'm a typer, so if I start typing, please, I'll show you where the buttons are as well, hopefully, if I remember. But this is where the style is. So let's create a new style. Again, I said I'll use my company initials, which is my company in this case, and for general text, maybe it's annotations, general annotations, or general. It's up to you, whatever you want to add to it. So either you prefix it or suffix it, doesn't matter as long as you have your own name associated with it. Click OK. Now this style is set up. I'm going to make it annotative because I love annotative now. And if you can figure out the power of it, it's awesome. I hated the old days of where you had this small printout stuck next to your printer where it says, oh, at 1/8 inch the text will be 96 inches tall, blah blah, all that, or 12 inches tall rather, and it just makes it harder. So what I'll do is I'm going to leave it at Arial, and sometimes I prefer Arial narrow in this case, so I'll do that. That's my preference here. The paper text height, you want to leave it at 0 because you want to dynamically manipulate that. So we'll just do annotative and text height. Let me create another one. Oh yeah, I do want to save my changes. Another one would be MC-DIMN. I use a different one for dimensions style because of the fact that if I need to change it down the road, it makes it easier. Maybe a different font or a smaller font. Maybe the width factor is a little bit smaller. And just, but again, you create that and narrow. Width factor maybe is different, but the paper text height, make sure it's set to 0. I set it to annotative again, and I'm going to say yes, save that, and under MCAN, I'm going to set that to current and close it. So now if I work with text at this point, so it matches my company standards right now. So it makes it so much easier to work with, to have a certain standard. So let's talk about the next would be the dimensions. And with the dimension, there are certain things I'm going to touch on because of the fact, let's see, so the dimension style. So before I get to dimension, I'll go to my other file here. I have the style under the style text styles here. I have all the text styles set up at this point, so we'll do the dimensions. So my text are MC annotative, dimension, symbol, title text, subtitle text, multiple different ones, maybe different width factors and whatnot. So that's what I ended up doing, was creating more styles in here to help facilitate my text down the road. So now next is the dimension. So we'll go to again the annotate tab under dimensions. You click on this little arrow, or you can type in dim style. And basically, again, you start with standard. So, and there is another one in there called annotative, which I will not use, but I will start with a new. And here I will again call it MCDIMN, I basically have one dimension style in my office standard, because I don't have a 96, one for 48, or one for 8, one for 9. I've seen in the past where people hard code the heights inside the dimension, which is not the way to go. If you use annotative, it just becomes so much easier to work with. So MCDIM, and then start with standard, okay, and annotative. So continue. So a few things. I mean, I'm not going to get into the whole dimension styles. You can tweak it to your liking. However, under symbols and arrows, I want to make sure that the leader is set to closed filled. The sizes I'm not going to show or talk about, but notice here though, however, the sizes, since I said annotative, the sizes are based on what they plot at. You don't have to do the math right now. But this is where under the text is what it's important. I am going to set my text to the MCDIMN annotation. Maybe the text color I override. Some people like it. Some people say, no, that's a no. We don't override the text. It's up to your choice. And they have their... The other thing I do is, if you notice, by default, when you start with a standard, it kind of looks like this, where the vertical is centered, horizontal is centered. Again, your preference. Notice that the angle is centered as well. So I'm going to do is vertical above and offset from dimension line. Again, I don't have to do the math. It's all decimal. It will automatically multiply it based on the scale that is on there. And then aligned with dimension style. So text alignment, if you want to, you can say horizontal. Different ways you can do it depending on the standard you are working with. This is the text height. Typically in architectural, we'll do 330 seconds. You can do 1/8. Some states and other entities require 1/8. So you may want to think about the height of the text for the dimension text. For the fit, I guess this is where the key is under the fit. Scale for dimension features. I'm going to set it at annotative. The other thing you can do is always leave it at 1 if you don't want to use annotative. Still, at least set it to 1. Then you can dynamically update your dim scale and type in 96 when you are at 1/8 inch, or 48 when you're at 48 1/4 inch, etc. So I am going to do the annotative. And then let's just talk about, click OK. So my dimension style is set up. Let's close this. And I'm going to draw a quick line here. And again, I was typing, sorry. Dimension right here. And draw that at 100 and, oh boy, that's a huge dimension. So let's just kind of reel it down a little bit here, linear dimension. And that's more meaningful here. Let's do another one. So if I do an angle, if I do a circle and dimension that, let's do this. So I'll do an angular dimension. Notice that it says annotative scale is 1/8 inch, and I don't have to worry about, in the properties I'm kind of pointing to right now, you have the text height as 330 seconds. I don't even have to worry about it. It basically will automatically calculate for me all the information and the sizes and everything. So then let's just do the radius here. If you notice, this radius is using this arrow. I just don't like that. If I do use the leader, those who are not using M leaders, if I do a leader right here, and I type in the text for the leader, notice that it kind of doesn't work for me. I want it in centered and all that kind of good stuff, but we set it to above, so how do we take care of that? So again, quickly under dimension, I'm using my old command called ddim, which is the dim style command. I'm going to create a new style for the leader and the radius here. So I'm going to say new, and I'm going to call it mc-a dimn-radial. And I'm going to start with, but here is used for all dimensions. I am going to say radius dimensions only. So notice that the name is kind of even disappeared. I shouldn't have even bothered naming it. So once I continue that, the symbols and arrow for this guy right here, for the radius, I want it to be a closed filled arrow in this case, let's say. And for the text, I want it to be centered as well. And I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to repeat this again one more time for the leader so you can see the change. So again, new. And again, start with MC dim annotative. And I'm going to say it's for leaders and tolerances. Continue. And what I'll do is here, symbols, it's already set to close and fill. For the text, vertical, I'm going to say centered. So that allows you to kind of see what will happen as soon as I update this. It may not update. I might have to use a command to do that. But let's say close. So what these are called are child dimensions styles, which is basically they are sub-styles of MCDIMN. And any settings that you change get overridden. So notice that now it became an arrow head as opposed to, so if I go to dim radius, it's a little bit more easier to see and follows the standard. The leaders don't update, so I'm going to do a leader command here quickly and show you. And now the leaders look really nice compared to this guy. If you have all those leaders, there's a quick command, by the way. It says update dimension, and it will update those dimensions for you. In this case, it was not centered, but the idea is that any new text that you create is automatically set to that centered and with an arrow, etc. So basically, the next step would be I'm going to get into is basically the M leaders. What I also did was under my dimension style, right here again, this guy right here. Okay, so I have overrides for angular, I have for leader, linear, and radial. So I have overrides for multiple different items. You can take a look at how they work as such. So our next step is to create multi-leader styles. So again, this small arrow, where is your multi-leader style manager? And within that, you basically, again, start with the standard. And I'm going to do is create a new one. Again, MC M leader, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Maybe annotations, or text rather, I'm sorry. I'll call it text. That's more appropriate here. Start with standard, and I am going to make it annotative as again. So M leader types, basically in this case, either it's text, block, or none. You don't want to put a text for block. You can just draw a leader very quickly. Block, you can have hex notes and things like that automatically placed at the end of the leader. So we'll do M text. And the text style, again, I'm going to use my, I mean, if you have a M leader text, but I'm going to make it match the annotations itself. Text, I'm going to keep it horizontal. Again, you can select the text height. Again, format it to 330 seconds because that's what I decide when I planned my setup of what standards I'm going to set up. That's what I did. And it says left attachment, middle of top line. It tells you what different looks you will have in this preview that I am pointing to right now. So the right attachment, you can just middle of text. You can play with those settings. and click OK. In this case, the other thing I also change in this is maximum leader points is set to 2. And then what you do is basically now I can click OK. I have my text set up. I'm going to say set current and close it. Now I can start adding multi-leaders. So notice that it attached to the center of this. And the other thing, since I set it up, notice that I have only 2 clicks that I did in this case. So basically why that was the case is in this MC text, I'm going to modify that. It says maximum leader points, say maybe 3, second segment angle, different settings you can set. Click OK, close, and then again, one more time, M leader. And that basically allows us to click 1, 2, and then select how far you want to go, and then type the text. So that's kind of a very handful thing. So with all this things that I'm doing, what I have completely forgotten was to think about the layering, because I talked about the layers earlier, which layer standards you want to follow. So in this case, I want to set up a layer standard or whatnot, and I've been creating text on just layer 0, which is you shouldn't have any objects on layer 0 unless you're creating a block. So let's talk about the layers itself. So under Home, this is your Layer Properties Manager. What we have in this case, I'm going to demo what we have many different layers for a standard template that we have. So in this case, if I look at, and this is an architectural template, and under A wall, the color is 11, maybe the line weights are heavier, and then whether it prints or not prints. So I'll show you just quickly how to create a couple layers. Those who know it, I mean, repeat, it's just kind of boring, but those who haven't seen it, maybe I might give you a hint or two, let's hope. So in my drawing, my Model T, I don't have any layers except the layer 0. So first and foremost, I'm going to say create a new layer and name it. So A-wall, depending on the standard again. The color, as much as I'm saying I'm moving on with the annotatives, I still haven't switched over to style-based plotting yet. I'm still stuck with CTBs. I don't know why, but it is the case. And if you want to know all this STB, CTB, we had a couple webinars in the past few months that covered that in detail, actually. So let's just say color magenta. The line weight, I do sometimes define it, the line weight I want, because if I use a generic CTB file and you don't you can mention to people, hey, just use the monochrome.ctb, because then it will take on automatically the weight of the line here if you use the monochrome.ctb out of the box. So let's create a couple more layers here. Sometimes I have like a no plot layer. I know def points, but I still want to be able to control what plots, what not plots, because I can't dump everything in def points. So that what I pay attention to sometimes is that what layers I create those objects, because the last thing you want is people creating all these objects on many different layers and they're not coordinating. So making sure the wall, the dimensions go on dimensions, things like that. So this is basically the setup that I have is, you have different line types and whatnot. So let's look at a completed picture of this guy right here. And, okay. So layers again. So these are my many different layers that I have in this, and it makes it easier for people to just kind of grow. The one thing that I neglected to do in this case was basically the description. This is an older template, so I don't have all the descriptions. It's nice to have the descriptions added in there. Okay, makes it easier to people to say, oh yeah, I know it's area boundary, but AAPPL, what does that mean? It's like appliances or something like that. So you can write it in that description very easily. Okay, so that covers the basics of creating different styles. You can take it further to tables, and you can take it further to blocks, and you have some blocks inserted. The other M leader I wanted to kind of show you just to kind of jump back to where we were very quickly and then get into plotting. Under the M leader, I have another one called block, and just to kind of demo what that does for you. Basically, there is this tag automatically inserted right here within this as a block at the end of that M leader. It's a very powerful tool. So let's start with, so I have my drawing set up. Now I want to be able to plot different things. So I'm going to open up a sample file here. Oop, where'd it go? Oh, there. Sorry. Aha, DWG. And so let's start with this, but our goal will be is I'm going to show you how I have like two separate files that I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my company-model template and then further make it into a sheet template. So again, as I set that Q new, if I hit that button right there, I have all my styles and everything set up in this document because I have my model.dwt file ready to go. What it does not have is all these layouts. So what I will do is basically right-click, create a new layout to start with, and then within that layout, before I do anything like that, if you notice that this dotted line basically is the margins of the paper. But before we do that, to make your life easy, I'm going to go back into the options. So again, right-click Options, and under Plot and Publish, by default, it says Printable Area. This drove me nuts all the time because every printable area for a different paper for a different printer is different, and then you are offsetting from that makes it much harder to have a consistent look. And more we're using PDFs and whatnot. So what I do is say edge of paper. This is a very important setting that I set up personally for myself. Default devices you can set up to DWG to PDF and hit apply and click OK. So now what I have to do is set up this sheet. So I'm going to right click and rename this, and I'll make it a 30 by 42 title block setting. Okay, and then I go to my page setup manager. And here what I'll do is I'm going to create a new layout called 30 by 42. This is a setup name, page setup name 30 by 42, and of course I'm going to prefix it with my company name. Click OK. Here you can select the printer, DWG to PDF. The other thing is I use full bleed, but it doesn't matter anymore since we said edge of paper, but let's just kind of keep it full bleed E1, which is 30 by 42. And I love using layouts. Makes it so much easier. And then the offsets, I'm going to set that to 0 because I don't need to, because it'll just do 30 by 42. That's all. The other thing I want to make sure that I do is select my company's CTB file, and if you notice that it's missing right here, so I'm going to just select monochrome.ctb right now, and I'll show you where to put your CTB files, and set up the way you like it, one-to-one since it's paper space, and look at the preview, blank paper, no biggie, and save OK. Now I have that setup done. Now I'm going to say set it current to this layout. What that did was, if you notice that it's from this edge to that edge, my layout is exactly 30 by 42, and I will show you how and prove it a little bit. So let's save this file because I don't want to lose it here. So I'm going to save this as a template file and name it my company sheet. And, oops. Okay, and create a new template here. And what I'll do is I have some settings. I'm not going to go into the detail of how, but it is, let's look at those. One was this plot where the plot styles are set up. So I'm going to go to my options under the files. And if I look at this guy right here, which is this printer support file path, plot style table search path, I will just copy this here quickly so I know where it is. And I will paste this right here and quickly go to my folder where that plot styles are. I have a CTB file for the company, this company that we're talking about, which is this My Company Color Black and White CTB. I'm going to copy that in there. Now, it's in the Plot Styles folder. I'm going to go back again, right-click on my layout name, Paste Setup Manager, and scroll down. I'm going to modify this setting right here, 30 by 42. And here, I'm going to make it My Company Color Black and White. And hit OK. The reason I say color BW is because of the fact that I can print any of the 255 colors will plot black, and then anything that is true color will print the color that it is. It's a trick if you want to use CTBs. And the other thing is that all the pen styles pick up the weight of the objects itself, so that makes it so much easier. I can assign layers, line weights, and move on quickly. So this is how I set up the page setup. And what that does allow me to do is in my sheet document that I have multiple different sizes that I do. So depending on ARC E, ARC E1, ARC E1 with the title block referenced into it. So depending on the project, I can easily bring in the right title sheet. So what I have is this A03, and I'll show you where that power comes in and how, if I wanted to create a new layout for this drawing, let's say. So to create a new layout, right-click. Before we started with a new layout, in this case, I'm going to say From Template. Which template? We're going to use the My Company Sheet template. And it says, hey, which one do you want? Let's just go with My Company ARC E1 with title block. And say, OK. Actually, let's just do this E1 30 by 42. And what it does, it brings in that layout from this file that we just created into the file that you are in. And now what that does, I'm going to XREF the title block so you see it a little bit better. So attach a drawing in my external reference, and I use 30 by 42. Say open, and where I insert it is 0, 0, and boom. Now I'm ready to plot. Why I have XREF the plot separately is because of the fact that we customize our templates with different names of the client and whatnot, so the title blocks are different. So that makes it now I can quickly, easy to go plot. Oops, I hate this command. Plot. You can turn off reconciling the. So notice that everything is set up ready to go because I started with the template file. So one more time I'll do that, and then right-click, Layout, from Template, and then I select my company's sheet template and hit Open. And let's just do a 11 by 17 sketch. Say OK. Now I have an 11 by 17 sketch. And I can go in and present my drawing very quickly. The other thing about this XREFing is that the problem with XREF is you can't have attributes. So in my case, what I did was I have a separate block right here that is part of that sheet template that I did on the paper space. So when I create a new template, the paper info comes in, this title block. So in this drawing, either it fills the information from the sheet set manager, or I can manually override it. So it allows me to quickly take care of that text information. So now I can go ahead and plot that. So this 11 by 17 that I just brought in, I'm going to do Control P again one more time. Why do I do that? No. Again, this is set up to be 11 by 17, DWG to PDF, my company CTB, everything ready to go. Offset is 0, 0. I don't need to offset it any bit because when I created my template, it came out and set it up correctly. And this is my quick plot that I did, 11 by 17 exactly. And hopefully this was a different workflow. I know you can always embed that into your model.dwt if you only use one title block, no biggie. But when you do batch publishing even, it allows you to quickly associate your drawings, pull the data from that template that you have, which is the sheet override template. So every time you plot, you can just say 30 by 42, doesn't matter, it'll plot it correctly. So with that, I hope this was helpful. There was a lot of information I covered between the lines. The one other quick tip, since it is tips and tricks in this case, this is the drawing that I started A3. And if I go to type in M text, and if you notice, go to style, well, it brought in the other ones in, but let me start a new drawing that will make a little bit more sense here. Okay, samples and sheet sets. So if I go to M text in my styles, notice that my company styles are not there. And what I'll do is I'm going to insert a quick block, insert, browse, and I have my company styles and layers block that I created open, insert it on the screen somewhere. I even have script routines that hide it, but I can just delete it. And what that is basically a block with all the stuff in it. I'll open that file up so you can see what that is exactly. It's a jumbled mess, but all it is this guy right here. I have all my dimensions, I have all my M-leader styles, everything drawn up in a small bunch with all my layers and whatnot, and I just inserted it into a file that I received that doesn't have all my information. Now I can go to my styles and have all my annotation styles, my dim styles, ready to go. And that's about it. Dave?
Okay, thanks, Naman. So let me just run through a couple more slides real quick, and then we'll do a couple of questions. So we just saw kind of the demonstration here. So there are some additional resources that we wanted to make sure that you're aware of. So there's some links here to the products, trials, to new features, videos, the service packs, etc. One of the things I think that may be interesting for folks
Okay,
is
sorry, Dave.
You're not seeing your screen.
Sorry
oh,
about
I'm
that.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Let me jump off. It helps if I change myself back to presenter. There we go. So you can see my screen now?
We can see your screen, thanks.
Okay, all right, great. So I was mentioning you had some links in the PowerPoint to the various downloads, etc. But more importantly, I think based on the subject matter of this particular webinar is that I put some links in here to various other webinars that we've done that cover some of the topics that Naman's been covering during this one in a lot more detail. So there's a couple of links to webinars dealing with plotting, one about dealing with styles, so that covers textiles and dimension styles, etc. One about setting up layouts and viewports, and this one about layer management. So to get into the really details of all these different things that Naman's been talking about, these webinars are definitely very good as a supplement to what we've talked about previously. And then, if you have other questions, you can definitely email us at the URL here. Make sure that you include the Build Your AutoCAD IQ in the subject line, so it goes to the AutoCAD team as opposed to the Revit or the media and entertainment team, etc. And with that, let me see if I can have a few questions that we can pose. So.
Do I have to answer those too?
Maybe.
Okay.
So actually, there weren't a whole lot of questions during the webinar. I think everybody was just enthralled with the presentation, but there were a couple here at the end that I think would be interesting. So there was a question about how to link client information into your sheets, and also like basically doing a plot stamp. And I think both of those are handled very well by using fields. And I don't know if you want to show like how you could insert a field into a piece of text or something real quick, if that's something that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I'll just take that title block, the timestamp block, and show them very quickly what that is. Is basically all it is a text info which I edit the field, and I'm saying this is my diesel expression. Sorry, this is a language within AutoCAD which allows us to get some prefix, drawing information, which is the drawing prefix, the drawing name. It also gets which layout I plotted, what time the plot was, the edit time, and then the plot time, and who plotted this. So instead of typing in text or anything like that, what this does is it just, every time I hit the plot button, it updates whoever is updating plotting at that time, and then the drawing name. It also gets the date and who did it. It's me in this case. So if you do quickly, let me close out.
Actually, so you're not presenting at the moment. If you
oh boy, that's a. Hey, how about that, Jack? I have to do it again. Okay, I'll take over.
Yep.
Oh, where am I? How do I do that again? Oops. Come on. Make presenter. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
And sorry about that, guys. So I was throwing it up in the air there, what I did exactly, but all I have is a title block stamp, and in there is a field information. The field it's an M text basically with the field inserted in it, and if I double click, it is an M text, multi-line text, and you can quickly edit the field here. And in this case, I used a special language called Diesel, within AutoCAD, which is basically it's pulling all these variables. It says the DWG prefix, a variable, plot time, date, what format I want it in, who the plotter is, and things like that. So you can look at that in the example. But quickly, if you wanted to do this, you can just start a mtext command and right-click and say field, insert field. And you can, by default, there are plenty of them. So under plot, you have the what's page size, the plot date, and which format you want. I mean, there's plethora of information. This was that block was created a long time ago when this information wasn't there in the past. So, and now once I plot it, it'll automatically fill in that information. I should have done a different one. So
yeah, you could just do like document for the file name or something like that.
Yeah, that's me.
Yep.
My document, my name, something like that. So as soon as it changes, it it automatically does that. So you can use the fields anywhere you want. It works with Sheet Set Manager. That's why when I showed you the fill-in block right here, it's all using just a lot of the fields itself.
Yeah, and so there was I think we have time for a couple more questions. Was a question about whether or not these webinars are recorded, and yes, they're all recorded. I think Nauman pasted in the link to the recordings already, so it's also going to be in the follow-up email and lots of different places. So if you need to get to one of them, you can certainly get to them. We've done over a year's worth, maybe almost a year and a half worth, so like 75 webinars or so, and there's lots of information that we've captured in these webinars. So there's a question, if you suggest building a template from scratch or starting with an existing template.
If you have already a template to a certain extent, why reinvent the wheel? But sometimes what I'll do is I'll start with the scratch and then copy in the information that I need by just typing in the text and copy pasting it, rather than starting from something that may not be, that have other issues in it, where because you'll have like different text styles and you can't delete those text styles and whatnot. I had that issue in this case, so to delete the text style or anything, don't have to worry about it. Just write the text down and copy paste it into a blank template if you want to start fresh.
Yep. And then I think we have time for one more question, and this one's a little tricky, I guess. So the person's asking, they're going to be receiving some plans drawn in metric, basically, and what to do, if should you have a metric template and an architectural template, or can you deal with just an architectural template?
We do separate for metric, one for metric, one for what's it called, imperial. So depending, and we have other templates for clients too. So if we're working on the client a lot, we create a template for them, because, like as I said, like some of the state agencies require a certain format for text, even that we use the style that they recommend, they prescribe in a sense. So we have multiple templates that we go with.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's probably a good solution as well. So AutoCAD should convert drawings to the units that are in place, but it's not guaranteed to do it, because depending on how it's saved. So I've got one final poll real quick, just before we wrap it up. So I'm just going to go ahead and launch this. Did you learn something new today? Want to see if we did our job, and I know that there's probably quite a variety of people on this webinar, so
I'm nervous.
but it looks like the vast majority, it looks like the vast majority did learn something new. So we'll go ahead and close that and share.
Okay, how about that?
So
now I can go home and sleep.
Yeah, so you get paid today, same as we always pay you, nothing. But thank you very much for everybody for attending today. We hope to see you again at a future webinar. And if you have any additional questions, please send them in to us via the email link that's in the PowerPoint and in the follow-up email, etc. And again, thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.